Good morning, good evening to everybody. Welcome to the third day of the OpenNebula Conference 2022 and to this panel with about what the edge means for the telecom industry. I would like to introduce all of the panelists that will be with us this afternoon. First of all, my name is Alfonso Carrillo. I am a senior edge solutions architect. I've been working in the telecom industry since the previous century, let's say. And after a long stay at Telefonica, now I'm working with OpenNebula. But let me introduce Juan Garcia from Telefonica, Senior Vice President of Technology, Innovation and Ecosystems. Michael Hanke from Managing Partner at Detecon. Michael Maasdam, Program Lead at Royal KPN, and Carlos Carranza, Senior Technical Manager at Vantage Towers. And let me also thank you, our sponsors, Linbit and Storepool, for sponsoring the conference. And without much more to say, let's get on with the interview to our panelists. And also you can send us your questions and we will try to answer them as they pop up in our screens. Okay, so after decades of fierce competition, the European Union forced on the telecom industry. I think that now you find your respective companies immersed in several strategic projects that together with the Europe are trying to come up with European solutions involving federation of your edge cloud resources. What are your thoughts about these new challenges, Juan Carlos, to start with?
Well, thank you, Alfonso, and good afternoon to all the audience. Well, let me give you my view on this. Well, anyone contributing to face the challenge of the European Commission to deploy 10,000 edge nodes by 2030, as has been set in the European Digital Strategy, should think on multi-cloud orchestration and federation at the edge. And I will tell you why. It is unlikely that any single company can do it on its own. And it is also very unlikely that a set of providers working independently can compete with global by default services like the ones provided by the web scale providers. Federation is then probably not a preference or something we like to do, but it's a must, okay, if we want to have a competitive solution at the edge. In the case of telecom operators like Telefonica, so we're already used to work in federation with other operators to provide universal services like voice, data, access, or IoT. This has helped our customers to work seamlessly with any of the operators worldwide, receive the service anywhere, and port their application and services without major effort from one market to another. And this is the same approach that we would like to follow with the edge services that will become, on our view, one of the next biggest universal services from operators, together with the networks and services. We have set up the mechanisms to accomplish this, as you know, at the European level with the IPCICs, but also worldwide with initiatives like CAMARA, the Global Community for Telco APIs, that is including in the scope also the development of open source telco edge computing APIs, both looking at the customers and also looking at other operators for federation. So as you see, our commitment and support for this kind of developments is high, and we are strongly convinced of the need.
Great. And Michael Hanke, what is your point of view?
Yeah, thank you, Alfonso. Thank you for getting the opportunity to join this panel today, and welcome to everybody who is listening. Yeah, I'm pretty much with Juan Carlos. I think today it becomes obvious that the edge will be really a next wave of a killer application, a very important technology, and we have to make up our minds how we can play in this field. And like Juan Carlos has just said, I don't think that any one of us will be able to do it on its own. So we need to bundle our forces. On the one hand, to share costs, to share risks, to bring the best brains together, ready to leapfrog in this technology. And this is only possible if we find ways of collaboration. And I'm also with Juan Carlos that as telco operators, we have some experience how to do so. I think there are also some new challenges. We will talk a little bit later, especially looking at, let me say, development of some software technology, which maybe should be done through an open source model. So maybe there will be some new challenges how to find a real good way of collaboration. But I can say on behalf of Deutsche Telekom, we are absolutely committed to follow this way and think it's really the right thing to do.
And Michael Maasdam from KPN.
Yes, thank you, Alfonso. And like my previous speakers, also thank you for being granted the opportunity to join the panel. Thanks, audience, for taking the time to listen to us talking about this telco industry, which is evolving and which has been evolving, of course, for decades. And I think we're now at a very interesting crossroads, because right now it doesn't matter whether you live in China, in the US, or in Europe. There's a lot of discussion in politics, but also in society on the importance of digital and being online. And there's so much value still locked in different data silos, in different ecosystems. And I think working together and also with the European Union taking the lead with their digital decade really can help us achieve a lot of value for society. So, of course, we've been working with other telco companies, with other IT companies for decades. And it's also something like a natural evolution, right? That you're progressing from telco fixed telephone interconnection to mobile interconnection, and also on the data layer, looking at those interconnections. So very positive of this European initiative, and very happy to contribute as KPN.
Indeed, you mentioned previously IPSASIS project, and also the European Alliance for Industry for Industrial Data Edge and Cloud, and also the Gaia X project. The European Union is really putting a lot of effort and making it very strategic, the move to edge computing, cloud, having sovereign data, and a lot of things related to that. And these are creating a lot of expectations in the European telco industry. And there's also recent moves in the supplier industry, in the likes of MobileHX, the Open Network Foundation, the Open Edge Computing Forum, that seem to indicate a very strong move for the telco edge clouds solutions to be based on open source. So, from the perspective of your companies that have for such a long time worked on proprietary solutions, what do you see the role your companies will be playing in these innovation initiatives? Let's start with this time with Juan Carlos again.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Alfonso. And that's another good question. Again, as we mentioned in the previous point, we'll need this interconnection, this federation orchestration. And because of this, telecom operators will need to agree on standards, for the main interfaces. The one looking at the customers, the one looking at the resources, but also the one looking at another operators for interconnection and federation. And what we face is that the traditional standardization processes that, as you know, were based on waterfall models that were moving sequentially from one stage to another, from requirements to analysis, design, specification, development, integration, testing, were lasting long months, when not years. Okay, and we are now in a digital era, and this is no longer acceptable for anything that pretends to be digital. Okay, like the edge computing services. So using open source models with a developer's approach can help in accelerating the standardization process that we are seeing that is necessary, facilitating interoperability, reducing the time to market, and increasing competitiveness. So it is very likely easier than two parts interoperate when they are based on the same code. And this is the principle that we follow. And the same thing applies with portability between systems, no? To the extent that these systems are based on the same open source code, the portability and compatibility of the applications that you build on top of these systems will be easier. No? Operators are, in general, in this is the case of Telefónica, at least supporting this new way of working, no? And we are showing this with great examples, no? The GSMA, for instance, the biggest associations of telecom operators, gathering more than 800 mobile network operators, has set collaboration partnerships with the Linux Foundation. That is the biggest developer community where the cloud technology is produced. Okay, and then we have examples like Anuket or Camara, where operators are working together with cloud technology experts. No? Operators are, on the other hand, also working in this line in other bodies, not just around Edge and Cloud. You mentioned ONF. You can add to that the Orange Alliance or the Telecom Infra Project. In this case, with the aim of promoting open alternatives in the market. No? So I think we are not just thinking and believing this is a way of a new way of working, but we are, showing with examples and with action that we are supporting this as well.
And just a little bit off the script. Do you think that, what is your opinion on the speed that specifications have to move forward? I know that in the telco industry, we're very used to work based on standards and specifications that are, consensus based. But when we're getting to the edge solutions, I am of the opinion that maybe we're going to need to do, as you've mentioned, we're going to be roll and show and then adapt that to everybody. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we will still need the standards, but we cannot wait for the specifications to be there to start developing. So what we think is that we'll have to run these two aspects in parallel, make them converge and feed each other. No, the specifications necessary to start developing code based on some requirements, and then developing code and feeding back to the technical specifications. So I think what is important here is that we are breaking the sequential stages, and we are working more on cycles, on short cycles of development and specification. And this is probably how things are working in the digital world. And the telco industry is getting into this digital world, and it's a part of the digital world. So I mean, we can do nothing but working in this way.
And Michael Hanke from DT, what are your thoughts on these two questions now?
Yeah, two questions. Okay. First of all, let me maybe start with looking at the external forces which are really drivers here. The first one is, as we've heard, a very big political interest to push edge further as a key technology in Europe, which is hand in hand with the needs of our citizens, of our society. And of course, this is a major impact for us. On the other hand, we have our clients, typically industrial clients, for example, automotive industry, and we clearly see that they are asking for such solutions. They're looking for the infrastructure. They're looking for technical specifications in terms of latency, security, and so on. And we have to respond to those needs of our customers. And certainly, of course, we are in a competitive field. And it's not only Europe, you have the whole world. And we know that there are very strong tech players out there. So we really have to make up our mind and get our act together to be able to stay in this competition, to be successful. And I guess for a telco company, it's very obvious to try to play here and really develop a market share and play in this market, because this is a technology which is closely linked to our core competencies in the network. So for example, because latency is such important and you need the integration with the mobile networks and so on. So it's obvious that we're going to engage here. And as I've already said, we need to collaborate. We cannot do it on our own. I think nobody in Europe is strong enough, and we have to find the best way. And talking about the time which might be available and the lead times to bring in some solutions into the market, this is, again, it's driven by competition, and we really have to be fast. And so personally, I think we cannot wait until we have fully standardized views and everything is regulated, but we have to push. and we have to be able to stay in the market. And as we see some other players, they are already in the market and driving in the edge solution. So we have to be fast and do this in a pragmatic and collaborative way.
Good. Michael Maasdam from KPN.
Yes, thank you. I was just pondering also the last thing you said, Michael, about change already happening as we speak. On the other hand, it's not always the change and the implementation is not always in the way which brings the most value to the broader society. And I think that's where the European Union steps in. And you could argue whether it's not already a bit too late or too little if you look at the current initiative on cloud and infrastructure system. If you look at the analysis of the European Union, where the gap is 11 billion each year with the US, with China. So it's a huge gap. And right now there are a few players getting a lion's share of the markets. So the interesting thing is, how can we actually collaborate and set standards together, ensuring this interoperability? And then if you look at the use cases of the industry, so use cases where you need the low latency, then you need you need to be sure that this autonomous driving vehicle has constant connection and it needs to be auditable. But then comes the hard part, and I also see the question in the chat already arriving, the hard part. What happens when you cross a boundary, like a border from the Netherlands to Germany? Or what happens if you switch over from one edge to the other edge? And then you need to find a way to work together and to get a business model. And I think where we as a sector struggled is in the value appropriation, because all of us were competing. So we want to have money for the services we're delivering. But how are we going to share the pie? And I think up until now, it was a bit of a prisoner's dilemma, you could argue, that we were all waiting for someone to move and begin. And I think this systemic failure or this market failure, it's, you know, can be discussed. I think it's a very good push now that we're being helped a bit by a broad body to really start and do this, making sure that this use case of this autonomous vehicle with seamless handover between operators and service providers can actually become a reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just of that, so there is a very nice question from the audience, but I'll just make a little bit of introduction about it. We have to understand that, and we, you know, in the telco industry, we have the capillarity and the reach to extend the edge to the doorsteps of the customers. There's different types of customers. There is industrial customers, administrations, local governments, tourist boards, the customers, individual persons, and there's an interesting question that just came up. Is that it reads, and I'll read it textually, so you give you time to think about it, and then whoever wants to answer first can raise the hand or start talking, and we'll see. The question reads, what are your thoughts about edge federation going outside the telecom area? From a customer perspective, I want edge services, whether I am connected to a telecom network or a public Wi-Fi or a private Wi-Fi network. This cannot be offered by only telcos, so the traditional collaboration model between telco operators will no longer be enough. Gentlemen?
Well, I mean, when we have spoken about the federation, we were, at least in my case, not referring just to telecom operators.
Mm-hmm.
Of talking about widely edge service providers. The question is that probably telecom operators, we have more experience on that because this is the model we use for our services traditionally. Yeah. Okay, but this is not meaning that a federation model is close to telecom operators. It's at least on my view. We have seen that in most of the infrastructures that we have today, the telecom operators need the collaboration with other parties, no? And we have seen this, you know, on towers. We have here vantage towers.
Yes.
We've seen this in data centers, and we have seen this in almost every part of the infrastructure we use in our network. So, and I understand that edge would be another infrastructure where we will see models also collaborating with non-operators.
Yeah, maybe I can continue. Just add a few thoughts. If you really want to establish edge service, you need a couple of capabilities. First of all, you have to be able to provide and to manage your infrastructure. Then, of course, you need capability in software development, software operations, maybe even in things like artificial intelligence, data management services, and so on. So you need a whole bunch of capabilities. And I would agree that not all of them are necessarily really the core competencies of telco operators. Therefore, it makes a lot of sense that you're looking for collaboration. On the one hand, I would say among the telco operators to really get regional coverage and to get a service or to provide a service at least all over Europe, but maybe also even globally, because many operators have a global network and we can scale it in a global way. But we also need collaboration with some other tech players who can bring in some other of the competencies. I would say as a tech operator, we have some really some big strengths in some of those areas, especially in the infrastructure area, but also how to connect to each other. But we will work together with some other tech players who can bring in, for example, real good competence in software development, in AI features, in data management features. And this might be, let me say, the best way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, and then we'll go with Carlos at the end to do his first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Alfonso. So I was reading the question again, and I was like, indeed, it doesn't matter if you're a consumer. It doesn't matter whether it's a telco or a software company or whatever. It just needs to work. It has to be trusted. It has to be affordable. And I think that is something we can only realize when we try to be competitive, have a competitive landscape, because when there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of innovation. And when there's a lot of innovation, you get better services. So some things can actually help us to accelerate. And that's a balance between some big global standards that we have this interoperability, but also the open source and the agility to move forward. And then it's a competitive landscape. So if the telco has the best offering, he will be at the end on the customer-facing solution. If it's another company, then it's another company.
Mm-hmm. Carlos, and you are not new to the telco industry, but you play a new role as a tower company. So maybe you can really help us with this question.
Here, I have to say that I tend to agree with the comment that it's not going to be the telcos alone. On our side, we as a neutral host, let's say, we feel in a good position to be able to, at least for the very edge part of the projects, to act as an aggregator, let's say, because we are very used to work with our major customers, which are the telcos, because they own the network, as mentioned. But we are capable of working also with other kind of let's say, not so huge scale kind of operators. So I feel that at least from a neutral host perspective, like ours, I would feel comfortable with this approach of federating many different stakeholders. As Juan Carlos has said, when he was talking about federation, he was not talking only about the telcos, only about the operators. I think we have to see it in a broad sense, and yeah, we feel comfortable in that scenario, I have to say.
Juan Carlos?
Also, we may not have time, but I think the question was very interesting, and I think it deserves an observation. Apart from the federation, so I mean, there will need to be some kind of collaboration with the owner of the network, being the telecom operator or the owner, because for a good edge computing experience, you not only need good computing, you also need good networking. So the access of the customer to the edge node is very relevant, and the one that is controlling that connectivity to the edge node is a partner that you need to take into consideration. So what I mean is that if you are an edge computing provider, you will have to partner with others to federate, but also with the one that is providing the connectivity to ensure that you have the right connection to the edge node. Okay.
Great. We have plenty of time. I think we're like 20 minutes away. My 2 cents on it. Yes, the telcos provide the connectivity all the way to the customer's doorsteps, as I mentioned before, and the POPs for the edge computing nodes could be in a train station, which is not part of a telco, so they will have their own infrastructure, or a SATA store that wants to, they are big consumers of data on all their screens and all this. Hotels, there's new views of the hotels don't want to have centralized Wi-Fi. They just want to put a connection to each room, so the guest can have a privacy and do their own edge things. So, and having said that, the big challenge that we have and we're facing on all these European projects is, yes, how do we get all these applications to edge A, B, C, X, Y, and make sure that they all work seamlessly with low latency, as Juan Carlos said, that the telcos are responsible to ensure that at least the getting out to the internet is fast and quick, and that the end users can rest assured that telcos and other partners that are closer to the edge will get together with a solution. So I think we can go on with the next question and the panel. Taking into account the dominant position of non-EU or European technology vendors, what do you expect from the European open source ecosystem to try to come up to par and have solutions that ensure sovereignty on data and the cloud? Juan Carlos.
Well, no problem to break the.
If you want to, if we can, let's switch to Michael.
I mean, as you want. Michael, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Let me start so we can change the order a little bit. Now, for me, this whole thing starts with the view from the customer, and I've had the chance to talk to several customers in the last couple of months, and what they say is they want to avoid a vendor lock-in. That's one of the main drivers. Maybe if they look at the current, some of the cloud providers, this is an issue for them, obviously. And they want, of course, they want a good commercial product, and they want global coverage. It is very important. And whatever we're going to do, if we want to be successful, we have to fulfill those customer expectations. And really, we have to sort out how we can do this in the best way. And we already feel the competition coming, especially from the Silicon Valley, I would say. And as I've mentioned, the only chance is to really work together in a very seamless way, to be fast, to develop something which is scalable, because if it's not scalable, you will never be able to give the right commercial conditions. And you have to find a model which you can really deploy globally, which is also only possible doing a lot of partnerings and find the right other partners who can help you to really provide a global solution. And if you want to play successful in this market, we have to go this way. I think we have some time. It's in the beginning. It's not too late. We can do this. So at least at Deutsche Telekom, we have a lot of hope that open source systems and open source communities could be the right way, because it could help, to move away from. The real bad thing is if all the European tech companies, each of them is building their own little solution, but no scalability, no global reach. Customers have to make a lot of contracts with different partners, and this is exactly what they do not want to do. Mm-hmm. So this is what we have to achieve.
Michael Maasdam?
Yes. So I think Europe proved when implementing the GDPR standards, they actually had a global reach. So it's very interesting to see what can happen if Europe unites and is able actually with some say like a Brussels effect to become a global standard setter for the good of a lot of us. So now the big challenge is here, of course, in this open ecosystem. Then it's not about legislation, but it's about actually playing on the fields. So you actually should make something, and you can't do that as Europe alone. It should be a global effort, and in that sense, open standards, they're very important building block to also look at the value distribution in the digital world at the moment. So I find it very ambitious and also very cool to see whether it can actually happen that we switch from being only a referee on the field to also playing on the field and try to also score a goal instead of only blowing the whistle on the football fields.
Juan, it's your turn, Juan Carlos.
Okay, well, I would like to give a different point of view. No, here we are talking about the European open source ecosystem, and there we not only have the developers and people contributing technology. I think Europe has good skills there and good technological capabilities. But I think we also need on the other part of the ecosystem that are the companies that needs to drive this code into commercial products that give a step, invest and drive this open source to adoption at scale. No? Then I think there is an effort also in European companies to make this. And on the other hand, the consumers, companies that may be willing to use that code for their business, also need to support the ecosystem. No? For instance, prioritizing the requirements. That is something that is very important for companies that are willing to take that code and make a commercial product out of it. No? Mm-hmm. And this is the only way to attract the investment. That you also see the consumers, setting requirements, prioritizing requirements, and also committing to deploy solutions based on that code. No? This is an example of this, for instance, is the contribution that the European operators have made, and this includes Telefonica in an ecosystem like Telecom Infra project, where we sent our technical requirements for the Open RAN product with the intention to promote the development of this technology in the market. And I think these kind of actions are also helping much on the European ecosystem to really produce, at the end, not just code, but also product out of it. That is what it will drive competitiveness, innovation, and all the things that we are talking about.
Good. And just to close up on this question, yes, the open source community, let's not confuse open source with free. Open source communities require a lot of effort. It could be voluntary work. It could be people that do things for pleasure, but it also takes a lot of effort to keep it running. And the support from all the users, as Juan Carlos and both Michaels really said, it's the users that make a product successful. It's not the brilliance of the idea. It's the user community, the end user that makes the product successful. And now moving on to question directly to Carlos as a tower company. What are your expectations in this new 5G edge environment?
Yeah, this is clearly for me. I see. Okay, we have to say, as a tower company, our main assets are ready today residing at the very, very edge of the mobile, let's say, of the mobile network, right? So because, we are deployed in major roads, in urban, rural environments, in railways. So sometimes even we manage sites which are already on premise, for example, inside factories, okay? So this means that we feel we are in a good position, towercos in general, not all, of course, not only Vantage, but towercos in general are in a good position to play a kind of significant or pivotal role for those 5G-based use cases. Not for all of them, but for those use cases which prove to require, let's say, extremely low latency, because there are use cases which do not require extremely low latency, but there are others which do require. So we feel we can be there. If the use cases require let's say, local processing capabilities so that we avoid unnecessary data exposure out of a specific or limited geographical area. We feel there we can have a place also. And when it comes to flexibility in terms of where the workloads can be placed, given that we feel we have a portfolio of assets which come from the very edge, even to the on-premise, and on the other side, even to some aggregation sites. So having all those things in mind within that, we can play a significant role here. Also, we think that we have another strength which comes directly from our customers, which are the operators. Okay, we have lots of experience managing high numbers of edge locations in the number of thousands. So for us, it's not new to manage the edge. We have this strong relation with our anchor tenants, with our customers, and we also have a clear vocation to become a trusted partner for those customers. This is, we would like to be able to complement the value chain and to play a role there. So we feel that, as a summary, having the kind of assets TowerCo typically has, we feel we can add value to the chain here.
And that means then that with the telco 5G operators, you're gonna have a closer relationship on where you're gonna share not only a passive, you don't have only a passive role, but an active role on the value chain. Is that difficult to to send the message to the telcos, or are the telcos requesting you to participate on that?
What we are seeing, initiatives from telcos in which we play, as mentioned, not a competing role, but a complementary. This is in the end, somebody mentioned, the owners of the network are the telcos, are not, we are not owners of the network. So yes, telcos need to be there, but we feel that we can complement maybe some parts of the value chain where it makes no sense to have a huge capillarity for a telco, and we can provide such capillarity, for example. So we see ourselves as a complement to the value chain.
Yeah, because Michael Maasdam mentioned that, you know, the investment gap of 11 billion euros a year that the European Union lacks from the rest. As a tower company, you help on that investment. You are capable of reducing that gap or you know, saving money to the telcos. Is that correct?
We think so, because in the end, we feel that today in general in the market, there's not too much room for overbuilding, let's say, for everybody building their own infrastructure. It looks to make sense to look at some kind of sharing, and sharing is something which is part of TowerCo's DNA, right? We live from sharing resources, either passive as they are now, or they can even be active. Why not? So just we think we can help to make a more rational expenditure in the market. Great.
And now moving on to the final topic. You know, in light of all the above what we talked, this is for all of you. How do you think this new environment is going to change the workforce and business model in the telecom sector, on the telecom industry, if you want to be real broad? And I'll let you guys choose your order this time. Who wants to go first?
I can go if you want, so that I keep on talking. Okay. As mentioned, we expect that once the 5G, and talking about the workforce initially in relation to what is a TowerCo, right? Again, we expect that once the 5G based use cases are identified, which prove to require either extremely low latency, let's say V2X, AR/VR, whichever, or they require significant local processing capabilities, let's say video analytics, for example, or once those use cases prove to be doable and prove to need such requirements, then we feel that we as TowerCo will need to load our staff or maybe our ecosystem of partner ecosystem staff with specialized profiles here, because if we are going to play a role, of course we need to incorporate the knowledge there.
Great. Any other thoughts to our panelist?
Well, Alfonso, I think this is another great question for reflection and discussion. So thank you again, because I think you're touching very interesting points. And concretely, this one, well, for this one, the Edge and 5G are representing probably not just the introduction of a new technology. So it's much more than that. It's probably a total transformation of the way we operate the network, the compute, and do business with them. Okay, and let me explain why I think so. So the first point, and I'm giving now probably a more technology and business perspective, different to what Carlos has gone through, that is more an infrastructure perspective. But when you think about the compute resources at the edge, so they will be very expensive, and not just for the infrastructure in general, because of the multi-tenancy ratio that you have there and the utilization of the capacity, no? And it will be much more expensive than the same computing capacity in a massive data center. Okay. On the other hand, if you look at the network, also all the 5G capabilities like latency, jitter, upstream bandwidth that are also required for the edge will be also very demanding in terms of resources, investment, and expenses. Okay. And this means that both capabilities, computing and network, will have to be delivered smartly, flexibly, on demand, and only where and when they are needed. This is something that you cannot do manually and at human speed. That will require a lot of automation, orchestration, and amplification in such a way that the network and the compute capabilities can be accessible and manageable by software from a portal or from a customer application and consumed as a service. Okay, and this is where the transformation and the difference comes. No? This implies that we are moving to a platform business, and at least for operators, it's something not easy because we are used to retailing to enterprise customers and consumers. And on the other hand, we will need a level of automation, okay, that will imply that we move all our operations to data-driven operations that will demand a lot of software skills and software engineers with the skills on open source tools, big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, edge and cloud, CI/CD, automated testing. So many things that are usually in the cloud that will require, of course, a change in profiles and skills. No? And so in summary, I think this evolution is bringing a transformation on operating and business models, and of course, the need of new skills and profiles.
Okay, great. Michael, Hanke, 30 seconds because we're running out of time.
Very short statement. So I think that we are already, of course, we are in a race for the better business model, for the best resources, a race between Europe and the USA and in China and whomever. And for me, it's just another round. So it's nothing new. It will change. We will have a demand for new, better educated resources with a clear digital mindset. But this has already started and it will now continue.
Michael Maasdam, please close this panel.
Yes, and I'm trying to close it concisely by some like great words about ESG, about corporate social responsibility. And I think there's an opportunity for the telco industry and all of us involved to really tell the story how we can make life better for everyone by implementing this federated edge cloud systems, and that you can actually contribute. And then, of course, you have to work for one of our companies as a big new tech talent. So closing remarks, Alfonso.
Great. Thank you very much to all of you guys. I think it's been very interesting, at least for me, very enlightening. Hope to see you soon. And Juan Carlos, I take that we need further conversation on all these topics. So maybe I'll think of some way of getting us together and keep thinking about this. Thank you very much, guys.
We much appreciate it.
Yeah,
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.